Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Today we have Eliza Love. She is thankful to be a member of the Parents Challenge family. She is presently a PhD candidate at North Central University, and her dissertation focuses on classroom social emotional intelligences. She is a pre-K through 8th grade educator in Colorado Springs District 11 with licenses in early childhood, elementary, English language arts, and gifted education. Ms. Love is also an adjunct professor at Grand Canyon University and has penned a critical thinking children's book titled, Will a Horse Eat a Hamburger? Ms. Love considers her greatest joys to be her 5 children, 2 teenage sons, and 5 triplet 5-year-old daughters. In addition to the family, Chihuahuas. Postdoctorate, Ms. Love hopes to act as an advocate for solo parent families and inform family court system regarding children's best interests and testify to reform U.S. education. And without further ado, Ms. Eliza Love.
Hi, Aisha, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for introducing me. Welcome, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. I have been attending Parents Challenge. I believe this is my 3rd year, and I know that pretty early on, I just was so impressed with the caliber of people who were presenting and the topics that they were presenting about. And I thought, oh, maybe someday I could present. So this is just a big dream come true to be able to pay it forward and give back and present to the families today. So welcome. All righty. Today we're going to learn how to survive, strive, and thrive amidst family court experiences. For anyone who's been through the family court system, it can be all encompassing. So you forget sometimes to have joy, you forget to have fun, you forget to prioritize the things in your family that you used to prioritize, and it can be an extremely emotional process. And so I was talking to Deb about some of the things that my family and I have walked through and ways that we were able to rise above, if you will. And so she really encouraged me to put forth a proposal to present tonight. Alrighty, so as Aisha mentioned, this is my little big family. So my oldest son is a senior at Palmer High School. And then my triplets are 5 years old and they're down here. They go to Audubon Elementary. And my middle son goes to Mann Middle School where I teach, and he's in 8th grade. And then these are the family Chihuahuas. I call them the twins. So this is Melody and Bruno. So this, I just included them on the first slide because they remind me, why I'm doing this and why I want to teach them that advocacy is so important if you do have information that you're able to share with others. Just again, another disclaimer that was listed in the description, but this class is not intended to provide specific legal advice. I'm not a practicing lawyer, paralegal, or entity who is allowed to provide case-specific legal advice. This class is meant to provide an overview of the family court system and also suggestions for navigating the court system and how to maintain your sanity while doing so. My qualifications, if you will, are that I've spent 14 years deeply enmeshed in the family court system. I've appeared pro bono, which means you represent yourself in multiple occasions. I directly assisted and personally defending myself with my lawyer over 24 times. I've navigated criminal, contempt, and family court situations. And then I'm presently working to learn how to petition the court to even the playing field, if you will, regarding disenfranchised cases. So disenfranchised might be families who can't afford legal help. Disenfranchised might be, certain cultural backgrounds. And so I just really want to even the playing field when it comes to who has access to high quality legal representation. Alrighty, this course does include quite a few sensitive topics. It really is intended to be an adults only course. That being said, I have 5 children, and I know even your best efforts to have them elsewhere in the house There may be kids coming in and out. So it really is up to you and your, level of comfort with that, or whatever your family needs are. This training, we will discuss some difficult topics, and there may be some triggers because there are things that maybe you have gone through or walked through, or your families and friends have, and it might trigger some intense emotions. So please, at any point, grab tissues, just take a small break. You can just walk away and come back after a few minutes. Feel free to do that as well. Alrighty, we're going to go through some jargon, which are just the technical terms associated with any, any profession or anything specific. So our court jargon that we're going to look at is, the first one is GAL. This means a guardian ad litem. It's really just a name for a lawyer for children. The instances where this might happen are in high conflict situations, instances of abuse and neglect, or oftentimes if there's young children, usually age 5 or under. The next term is court and family investigator. This is someone who will interview both sides of the family and then present their findings to the judge on behalf of the children, so that the children can speak to somebody in a positive way without feeling pressured by either parent. And then the court and family investigator is trusted by the courts to present an unbiased view of what's happening in the family. We'll talk more about that later, if that actually happens or not. MOU is Memorandum of Understanding. This is just a court order or an agreement filed with the court. Generally, these are to the point where two parties have come to an agreement. And then contempt is disobedience or disrespect of a court official or a court order. So we'll talk a little bit about how important it is to follow your court order to a T, just so that you can't ever be held in contempt by the other party. Alrighty, people will often say to you, well, what does your custody look like? Well, did you get custody? Well, that's not really a term anymore. They call it the allocation of parenting time. So this is now the new term that was formerly known as custody. A modification of a court order is another type of case. This can either be agreed or contested. Let's say you and your co-parent have an amicable relationship, and you can email or text or have a phone call or sit down together and work things out. You can make changes to your court order without having to hire a lawyer if both of you, it's an even playing field where you both get along and you're both going to work for the best interests of the kids. Another type of case is dissolution of marriage, and that's a divorce either with children or without. And then the final type of case that you see sometimes in family court is a restraining order. So generally you can obtain those against an individual, but it's extremely rare that you're going to obtain one against children unless there was a situation where DHS or the police got involved, and then they have a different type of restraining order that's appropriate in the family court. Really the type of court that handles the restraining orders, they don't like to get mixed up with what's happening in family court, because then a parent's parenting time could be unlawfully restricted. So it's extremely frustrating if you're in a domestically violent situation and you are trying to protect yourself and your children. Unfortunately, most often your restraining order won't go through, because they're going to see it as you just trying to manipulate the courts to get all of the parenting time. So there are ways to go through the family court to try to advocate and protect yourself from domestic violence and abuse. But it does have to be through the family court channels if there's children involved. All right. This was probably the biggest learning curve for me, because I was a huge fan of Law and Order. And I was like, well, on Law and Order, they bring in this type of evidence, and they just say, the lawyer went on these huge long monologues, right? And they just said whatever they wanted, and they showed the text message, and they showed whatever. And all of it was admitted into court, right? So that's not really the way that it is in reality. And so I just gave some examples that hopefully are helpful for what a quality piece of evidence looks like versus an emotional piece. Again, it's perfectly normal for this to be a really an emotional time, because you're maybe trying to protect or even just advocate for your children. And, most everybody loves their kids and want what's best for them. So when you're having to, what feels like, give up on your morals or your ethics about how your kids should be raised, or you're in a situation with a toxic co-parent, it's extremely frustrating and it's very emotional. So regarding social media posts, the emotional part of us would want to just screenshot everything and, oh, look, they went out with a new girlfriend or boyfriend, and, oh, they ate at this restaurant, and here's a picture of them taking shots. An adult is allowed to be at a bar or restaurant taking shots with their friends if they want to. If it's not their night to have the kids, or even if it is and they got a babysitter, I mean, as long as they're not putting the kids in any sort of danger, it really isn't considered evidence. However, if there are social media posts showing specific threats that one parent has made to another, or ad hominem attacks or attacks against the person, so they're personal attacks, any sort of threats, showing drinking or drugs in the presence of the kids. So if somebody's posing with alcohol or drugs, and it's obvious that it's not really a kid friendly environment, or any other irresponsible behaviors, those could be. But again, not being a lawyer, you would really have to confer with someone about your specific case. It's so tempting to not at all to be controlling, but you just want to get the truth heard. And so lots of parents will video or audio tape their kids. Sometimes they let the kids know, sometimes they don't let the kids know. That's never going to get admitted into court. They don't accept, it's really considered hearsay. And then because the child is a minor, they don't allow it into court. Where those things might be helpful is if the children make direct statements to the guardian ad litem or to the court and family investigator, but only if they're uncoached. These people are professionals and they're really good at picking up on, daddy does this every night, blah, blah, blah. Like if it's obvious, or mommy does this or whatever, it's obvious if it is disingenuous. So if it doesn't come from a true place, or if it's not a true concern, then they're just going to see it again as an attempt to manipulate. And it's really unhealthy for the kids. My backgrounds in education have required that I take quite extensive amounts of trainings for early childhood development and growth. And it's just mentally and emotionally really harmful for the kids to have a phone in their face, or even if you try to do it on the down low, kids are pretty smart. And so then they feel like they have to say what you expect them to say versus just getting to be a kid. So we don't want to put them, in those situations. The other thing that I found a bit difficult was in situations that I was in and some of my friends were in, the teachers saw the truth about what was going on in our situation. The therapists saw the truth. My friends saw the truth. My children, my friends' children would say things to those entities. And then I just, would you be willing to testify? I would almost jump on them. And then that put them in a weird position. And now that I'm through a lot of things, I realize how socially unacceptable that is and how uncomfortable I probably made that other person. But I was desperate at that point. I was just desperate for somebody to see that it wasn't just me saying that my kids were not in a safe situation. So again, this is a place where it would be appropriate for a guardian ad litem or court and family investigator to hear from the teachers, to hear from the therapists, to hear from, your friends and family to whom the kids have divulged information. Therapists cannot testify if both parties don't agree. So unfortunately, what happens often is if there's mental, emotional, or physical abuse on one side, the parent or grandparent or whomever's doing the abuse won't agree to allow the therapist to testify, and then, what the kids say in therapy is not considered admissible or allowed in court. All right, I bought a coffee mug for my lawyer and his wife because they work at the same firm. So I bought them both a coffee mug. It says, "Dance like no one's watching, but text and email like it will be read in court one day. Love, your lawyer," right? So, it's really true. Again, so many of these situations are very emotional. They can be very high conflict, and you just feel desperate at times. And you may be working in a situation with a co-parent who knows how to manipulate you. If you were married or in a relationship for any period of time, they might know some of your vulnerabilities or what buttons they can push. And it just is extremely important that you're very careful about what you put in writing. And I will give you, some ideas to help with that too. Alrighty. When we're interacting with our lawyers, there's some things that we do want to do to maximize their time with us and maximize the money that we're going to spend. And there's some things that we don't want to do because then it will actually hinder your lawyer's ability to present a strong case in court. So on the left side, we do want you to decide beforehand and explain to your lawyer what your biggest priorities and non-negotiables are for your family. If your family has celebrated the 4th of July every year, that's your big holiday, that's when you do your family reunion, whatever, then that's a non-negotiable for you. If you are Christian or Catholic or any sort of, affiliation with a religion, or if it's extremely important to you that your kids are involved in sports, or they're already involved in sports and you want them to continue, you have to sit down and make for yourself a list of what really you're not willing to budge on. Make it a small list, because when you start getting too specific and asking for too much, it's just going to appear to judges like you're trying to be too controlling. So it really is important that you kind of make peace with the fact that you're not going to get to do everything with your kids that you want to. It's my biggest heartbreak, to be honest. But my biggest joy is that then when I go back and revisit what my non-negotiables are, I have twice as much fun with them doing whatever I'm doing, because I know that I got to choose it. And I know that I get to, I hate to use the word control, but I get to have influence and impact on, what we're doing in that moment. Try not to overwhelm your lawyer with every disagreement, petty remark, or small issue from the opposing party, especially if you're working with a difficult co-parent. There's going to be quite a few every day. So you might receive text messages, you might receive messages on social media. Just block them. Take a screenshot, but block the person. So one thing I would do is print off things that were said and print off things that were sent to me, and I would put them in a binder. And then, they would say, "Is there anything else you think is important?" I would just give them the binder. They'd flip through it and say, "Yeah, make me a copy of this. We can use this," versus, giving them 500 pieces of paper of every conversation. You do want to respond to emails and phone calls and documentation requests in a timely manner. Do not ignore your lawyer because you're angry, because you're tired of paying them so much money, or because you're just tired of dealing with your situation. I've been very tempted at times just to say, like, you know what, forget it. I can't do this anymore. I'm working 2 jobs. I have 5 kids. I'm trying to volunteer in the community. Forget it. I just can't do this anymore. But the sooner you reply to your lawyer and the more involved you are, the more you're going to feel like you've had some sort of influence on the outcome. We do always want to communicate respectfully and honestly, as you would to a coworker or other professional. Lawyers have to see us in a really vulnerable situation, sometimes in a high conflict situation. So they're used to a certain level of maybe being spoken to in not a very professional way, or people crying or people yelling at them. They're used to a certain degree of that because they get it. Family court is extremely rough because it's about your most precious, your most precious family. And so they get it. However, when you're going to get your oil changed, or you order a custom cake, or these are people that we wouldn't generally shout at. If there's something wrong, you would just clarify it with them, and that's all you have to do with your lawyer too. See where you wrote this, it's supposed to say this, or things like that. So just be open and honest, but be polite and respectful. Do not mistake your lawyer for a mental health therapist or a mental health professional. Again, they're used to a certain degree of that because you have to share your experience. You have to share what is happening to you and your family. So they're absolutely willing to listen to you. But when I was going through some of our most difficult times, I had a therapist also, because my therapist actually helped me talk through and debrief what our family priorities are, things that happened, and how I could take ownership or ignore what was going on, and what it was going to be most important for me to prioritize for my lawyer to make sure that when we were in court, they tried their best to make it happen. Absolutely do explain your concerns and your frustrations, explain your goals for your family, your hopes and dreams for your family, and for your legal situation. Lawyers are people too, and most of them, there's mostly good ones out there, they want to be able to help you get what you and your family need or want in court. Okay. So they definitely want to hear that, but you can't expect your lawyer to have a magic wand, if you will. There's nothing that they can just wave and get you everything you want in court. When we go to get new tires on our car, we expect them to switch out the tires. And if there's a problem, we take it back and they fix it. When we order a cake, we pick out the design and the flavor and the frosting and all that, and they make it just how we want it. That is not court in any way, shape, or form. So unfortunately, even when people are innocent, or even when people are on the right side of the law, they're often punished by the courts because of how things can play out. So you absolutely cannot expect that your lawyer's just going to walk in and say this, that, the other, and then you're going to be done. It's an extremely complicated and tricky process, which is why it's so important to have a professional working with you. Alrighty, that was a lot of information in a short period of time. So we're going to take a little break. Initially, we were going to do some breakout rooms, but I think with the amount of people here, we can just put it into the chat. So I'd like you guys to put into the chat just something that you may have learned already, or something that you maybe consider to have been of value for you. Good, great feedback, guys. Thank you so much. I love to hear if things are resonating with you. That's excellent. Yeah, yes, absolutely. Aisha, do you mind if I share it? Well, you shared it publicly. Yeah, Aisha says it's great to have a therapist just to get through life, period, and help you process, not just even family court. Yes, and then just not taking things out on the court, not taking things out on the lawyers, just your effective communication, as Rachel puts, is important in all areas of life. Yeah, yep, that custody is no longer used. That changed. They changed it to parenting time, and now they're calling it allocation of parenting time. So it keeps progressing. Yeah, excellent point, Derek. Thank you so much. So keeping that binder of information, that way you're not just sending an email and getting charged for every time your lawyer reads the email. You just have the binder, and then they can flip through when you're doing an in-person session. Great, about the screenshots. Yep. And we're going to go into a little bit more detail too regarding documentation. That really is going to be the bread and butter of your case is, documentation. And so Spencer, I'm sorry to hear. I'm hoping for you it'll be a positive experience. It is really difficult, to go through again, because it involves our families, and those are the most important things to us. But the best thing that I was able to learn from it is we're going to have things, oh, I don't know, like COVID, or we're going to have things like a death in the family or an illness in the family. And really our response to it, our social emotional intelligence that we have while we're going through difficult things, that really kind of helps shape and form who we are. And then it helps set that example for our children as well, so that when they go through things, they learn not to just fall apart, but that we have to still continue to live our lives and push forward, and not just survive, right? We don't want to just survive, we want to thrive. And so hopefully some of the tools and techniques I'll give you tonight will help you, make you feel like you can be a bit more in charge of, the whole process and what you want out of it. Okay. Yeah, Jennifer, I'll talk a little bit more, about a court and family investigator and a guardian ad litem. You can request them. The courts will sometimes put them in place. Usually if it's a high conflict situation, they're more likely to assign or appoint a court and family investigator. Alrighty, I saw Aisha stretching it out. That's a good idea. Stretch it out. You can roll your head a little bit, your shoulders gets loosened up. Does everybody feel like we're good to go back in? Okay, so again, the bread and butter of your case will be documentation. The first time that I went through the process, I was not very effective with my documentation, and I was very manic about it. So hang on. So I was just very manic. I was trying to go around like crazy and screenshot everything and get text messages off my phone. This was in the day before you could just like screenshot your text and email it to oh my gosh, it was a big mess. And I just, I lost a lot of my joy during that time, and I lost a lot of my peace. And, when I went through it the second round, I was a lot calmer and more knowledgeable about what I should pay attention to and what I should document. And so I just feel like if my family and I going through what we've had to go through, if I can share knowledge and help even just one other person navigate it in a bit less pain than I had to experience going through it, because I just was ignorant of what to do and how to do it, then it would be worth it. So when you're documenting, document emails, especially if they include any threatening, rude, or abusive language. The easiest way to do that is make yourself a folder. It can have the co-parent or the other party's name, or you could just put something like co-parent or something, if in case your kids get in your email and they poke around or whatever, you could just name it something that you know what it's named. A technique that I learned that's been very helpful is to send what's called a pass down email. So it'll have 3 categories. Hello, so-and-so. Number 1, education. So-and-so has math homework every night on their iPad. They have to read 20 minutes every night, and they, have a special project due Friday. The details are in their backpack. Number 2 is medical. So-and-so has a new inhaler in their backpack, along with the paperwork from the doctor's appointment. Please make sure they're taking it according to the doctor's paperwork. And then the 3rd is miscellaneous. Don't forget, our child has a birthday party this weekend. Here's the address and the parents' contact info. I will be there since they're a mutual friend, but I just wanted a friendly reminder for you to bring them or whatever. So that has been really just life-changing for me, because you send it every time that you exchange the kids. So let's say you exchange once every 3 days or every other week. On the night that the kids go, that you've exchanged them, or the morning of, you just send the other person this pass down email. And that way it documents everything. It's not emotional, right? So we're not attacking. I noticed that our kid came home with jelly in their hair and their hair wasn't brushed and they had mismatched socks. Listen, all of that's irritating, and it's probably true. And it probably means that the kid isn't getting, what they need, or maybe what's best for them. But this is not the time and place to go over it. And honestly, the courts deal with so many family cases where children are in extreme poverty or extreme abuse or extreme neglect. They kind of, unfortunately, have become a little bit hardened and uncaring. If it seems like a kid is being neglected a little less. That's a big statement to make, but it's very true. So you have to do the best to give consistency and routine, and to teach your child how to take care of themselves when they're in your home, because ultimately you want them to learn those life skills for when they go out in the real world. And then if you're teaching them the correct life skills when they're with you, they, as they get older, will implement those skills in the other household as well. So you'll still have been able to teach them how to care for themselves as they get older, even if their parent seems not able or not focused on doing so. So that pass down email just documents everything in a very, I hate to use the word clinical, but it's just in a very factual way about keep it always focused just on what your kids need. You do also want to immediately screenshot and email to yourself any text messages, the thread in order, that show any agreements that you've made with the other parent, any abusive or threatening language, or any important information. It's really easy to say, oh, I'm tired, I'll do it later. And then later, is 4 or 5 days later, and then your kid played with your phone, and then somehow text messages get deleted. So again, to help you keep your peace, if you just screenshot it and email it to yourself, then you open your email, throw it in that folder. You don't even have to look at it right away or organize it right away. It's just there, and then it's off your mind. You do always want to document any sort of bruising. Let me be clear with this. So we have in education and in the medical world, what's considered non-accidental trauma and then accidental trauma. So toddlers especially will get these little tiny bruises on their shins, and it sometimes will even look like someone has taken their fingerprints and grabbed their leg or something. But toddlers run into everything, or everything falls on them, or whatever. So toddlers, little kids, kindergarten, first grade, pretty much up to about, third, fourth grade, will get sometimes mysterious bruises. That's not something that you ever want to document to try to make the case that the other parent is abusing them. If or see that there's, I don't know, a bruise that's shaped like a wooden spoon, or you see that there's a bruise where it's obvious there's an adult thumbprint and fingerprints where they've grabbed the leg. Those are the things that you want to be documenting. So you want to take pictures of it in a way that doesn't do emotional or mental damage for your kid. So let's say there's a bruise on their leg that's obviously abuse. Hey, we're going to play a game. Can you do this for me? Can you lay on the ground and look up at the ceiling and put your legs in the air, and you're going to count to 15 or whatever. And then while they have their legs in the air, you can just snap a quick picture. So you want to really do it in a way that makes them unaware that you have these great concerns. If I just want to be careful with how I say it, but again, if you're confident that a true situation of abuse has occurred, or multiple instances have occurred and then it's gotten worse, you definitely want to go to the ER, or not even an urgent care. You would want to go to the ER, because they have nurses and doctors trained for being mandatory reporters. So I'm a teacher, so I'm required to report if I see abuse or neglect of children, and they're held by the same standard. So you can also call the police, and the police will document a report with the pictures that you took. They sometimes will take pictures. There are places at the police station where kids go to be interviewed, where it's a really positive, happy place that they go to be interviewed, so they're not scared. But again, I cannot say this enough. Do not try to make the case that the other parent is hurting the kids in any way, if you know in your heart it's not true. And I know that everybody here is like, well, why would anybody do that? It's really tempting. It's really tempting if your kid is being hurt mentally or emotionally and they're being abused that way. You just want to get your kid out, right? You just want to get your kid away. You want to get them out of that situation. You're also emotional and shocked that this other parent would treat your kids this way. You're shocked that the other parent will hurt the children emotionally or mentally to try to get back at you. So there's a lot of emotions that surround it, but you cannot ever try to get further in family court by asserting that there's abuse and neglect when there isn't, because it's going to be very obvious. And then you actually will lose favor with a judge extremely quickly if they find out that you've, basically just made things up. The police actually also, if they find that they're being called out to a certain address multiple times, but that it's unfounded, that it's not true, they can actually charge you with misuse of public officials' time. They can charge you with domestic violence harassment. So it's just don't ever try to do it to entrap the other parent. We all have received emails from our bosses or co-parents or family members or things like that, that are unkind or, less than desirable. Again, try to remember that, that dance poster that I put up. So before you respond, consider that anything you say will someday be read in court. You can always write a response. So I won't put an address in the send, in the to button or to area. I'll write my response and I just let it sit in drafts for a few days. Or I'll write it in a journal. If an immediate response is required, or you just want to let your co-parent know that you are thinking about what they've said, you can say, thanks for the information. I'd like to take some time and space before I issue a response. So you can reply like that, because what that does is let them know you've heard them. It lets them know you're not ignoring them, but it also lets them know that you're not going to be pressured or bullied into making any sort of decision about what they're asking. Alrighty, this is a term that I have a love-hate relationship with. So this term is called the best interests, and it's in the court system under the Colorado Revised Statute, Title 14, under the domestic matters, and it's called best interests of child. So while co-parenting is not appropriate in all circumstances following a dissolution of marriage or a legal separation, the General Assembly finds and declares that in most circumstances, it's in the best interest of all parties to encourage frequent and continuing contact between each parent and the minor children of the marriage after the parents have separated or dissolved their marriage. So the courts are basically saying, in order to make this happen, in order to meet this goal, they want the parents to share the rights and responsibilities of child rearing and to encourage love, affection, and contact between the children and the parents. I feel like this was written by someone who has never been through the family court process. So, yes, this is absolutely the ideal, just like it's ideal that everybody who has millions of dollars will, tithe or donate money to help end world hunger or help end hunger in their neighborhoods. I mean, we have so many ideals in the world that could happen, if in perfect scenarios. It's just extremely frustrating when you're the parent who handles all of the rights and responsibilities, but yet you're ordered to share parenting time. Or you're the parent who encourages love and affection and contact with the other parent, but then your kids come back and I hate you. Daddy says that you're the reason you guys got divorced. Mommy says that it's because you're dating your girlfriend. That's why you guys got divorced. So it's just, it's ideal that you can do these things that they want you to do. And that absolutely should be your genuine and honest goal while you're co-parenting. However, if you're in a tough situation, I'll talk more about that later. This makes it difficult. If you are in a situation of domestic violence or child abuse or even mental or emotional abuse, your lawyer may be able to argue under this best interest clause or this best interest statute, excuse me, because a child's best interests aren't being served if they're told that they're stupid 500 times a day and everything is their fault. Their best interests aren't being served if parents are making threats towards the other parent. The kid's best interests aren't being served if one parent lets the kids stay home from school 3 out of 5 days out of the week. So if you are in situations that take a little bit more detail to understand or a little bit more tricky, your lawyer could possibly argue under the best interest statute that the things going on, are actually detrimental to your kid instead of being, positive and supportive. Alrighty, I feel like the writing is really tiny and I'm really sorry. So if you look at the file on your own, I believe Deb sent it out to everybody. So if you look at the PowerPoint on your own, it's a little bit better, but I just wanted to make sure to get this information across, because if someone had told me this stuff like 11, 12 years ago, it would have been life-changing. And so again, I'm just very passionate about making sure that you guys have this information. There's different co-parenting types, and some of them are wonderful and some of them are very difficult. So the first one that is extremely difficult is a toxic co-parent. That word toxic is thrown around like crazy nowadays, but the characteristics of a toxic co-parent is they will argue over everything. There was a situation where a mother was told what type of laundry detergent that she was allowed to use because the laundry detergent she used, the scent was offensive to the father. So he was letting her know what the kid's clothing was allowed to be washed in. So toxic co-parents will mock you in front of the children. They'll make fun of you, or when you're alone or via email or text message. They may refuse to pay child support. They may refuse to reimburse half of medical expenses. They generally do not follow court orders. They will purposely lose items or just lose items that belong at your house because they just don't care. Now, when I say they'll bring new love interests around the kids, listen, if a marriage doesn't work out and two people separate and they find new people to bring into the family, that's perfectly normal and perfectly acceptable. A toxic co-parent will bring a frequent number of, people around the kids, even if it's just, a temporary situation, we'll call it. They'll have no problem being rude or unkind to you in front of the kids. And that specifically does go against that Colorado statute of doing what's in the kids' best interest. Narcissistic co-parenting, really, there is no co-parenting when you're dealing with a narcissist, because they're happy with you as long as you're giving them everything they want, even if it's against what's best for the kids. So narcissistic is like toxic taken to a whole more serious level. They go about everything in a systematic way, which will purposely discredit you to professionals and people who don't know your situation. So by discrediting, maybe you've met with the kids' principal because there has been a history of child abuse, and you are just trying to advocate for your kids and ask the principal and the teachers to just keep an eye out for your situation. If the other parent gets wind of that, they'll be scared because they don't want to be found out. So what they'll do is discredit you. Just so you know, they'll tell the principal and the teachers, my ex-wife has a long-standing and severe issues with mental health, issues. And that's also the reason why our marriage ended. And additionally, she frequently actually is the one who abuses and neglects the kids. And then to cover that up, blames it on me. So they'll go about, just using really just cutting and nasty terms and really rude and unkind terms to try to, and just so you know, she can't keep a job and she's been fired from every job she's ever had. Like, they'll bring in stuff that's not even about the kids in an attempt to discredit. And even if it's not true, they'll just make stuff up, to try to discredit you. So that's called a false narrative. I know there's lots of stuff about misinformation, disinformation. What this is a false narrative means they're purposely telling a story to other people or people in positions of power to try to make you look crazy or to try to make you look like an unfit parent. They also will renege on every agreement that was made. They have no desire for anything other than what benefits around them. If you're experiencing this, I'm very sorry. I really, truly, from my heart, it's a lot. It's a lot to go through. So I highly recommend that you research terms like gaslighting, grooming. I'm going to give you some resources at the end of the class. Definitely, get a hold of a therapist and say, I feel like this is happening, but I also feel crazy because, this isn't how it's going down. But narcissists are always usually very good at what they do. So it's hard to know when you're a genuine person or you're just trying to live your life and do what's best for your kids. Sometimes it's hard to know how to advocate for yourself and how to set those boundaries to respond. A resource for you for communication. This is incredible. Talkingparents.com. It's incredible. It's free. If you do want to access the archived information, like previous screenshots you may have attached, previous text messages you may have attached, previous pictures, it's something like $8.99, $9.99 a month, I think. But it is free. You can email. They added a new feature where you can do phone calls, and then it types out a transcript of the phone call. So if your co-parent spends the whole time that your kid is on the phone call with their parent, badgering them, belittling them, picking at them. I see you have a C, you got to get that C up. You're worthless. Losers get C's. Are you a loser? Just terrible stuff like that. Talking Parents will create a transcript of how the phone call went. And then that is something that you could share with your lawyer. You can also send child support payments through Talking Parents. Our Family Wizard, there is a cost, and I don't know how much that is, but it's another one. It has a calendar where both parties can enter, like soccer game and dance recital, and it's 1950s day at the school. And so it documents which parent put the comment on the calendar. And once you put it on, it goes through a cycle where you can edit it, but you can never remove it. So it's not like you could put something on and then the other parent removes it and says, well, it's not on our calendar, so I don't see it, stuff like that. So it keeps it on there. If you're dealing with a toxic or narcissistic co-parent, limit your texting and phone calls. Set that boundary very early. If they continue to persist in texting or calling, you can just reply by text message and say, we have a website through which we communicate. Do not contact me here again. And then you just keep sending that same message over and over and over and over. You never address with them what they're trying to get you to engage about via text or phone call. You always want to communicate through those websites so that there's a date and time stamp of what they're saying to you. Oh, and then some helpful phrases, because again, if I had known so many years ago what to say, I wasted so much time, you all, on trying to make sure the truth was documented, on trying to get the other parent to focus on just talking about our kids and what was best for them. And all it did was fuel the fire, because it gave that person more attention, and that's what they wanted. So some phrases that you can use to shut things down. Thank you for the information. That's when a response is required, but you don't agree with what they're saying. So, other parent says to you in an email, I think you're the biggest loser. You're a terrible example of a parent for our kids. I hope you get run over by a bus, whatever. Thank you for the information. And you're done. Like, you're done. It stops it right there. You're not giving them any more attention. You're not engaging in what they've said. You don't tell them that it hurt your feelings. They don't care. Okay. That's what they were trying to do. So the rational, reasonable part of our brain wants to try to fix things, wants to fix misunderstandings. When you're dealing with toxic and narcissistic co-parents, they don't care. They just don't care. Another helpful phrase is, thank you. I'll take this into consideration. Oftentimes they'll go back and want to rehash the past, and it's like, dude or dudette, whomever, move on, right? So they'll rehash all this stuff, but it won't be the truth, right? So you just say, thank you for sharing your recollection of events. I would like to stay focused on finding a solution and then put your kids' names in there. Please let me know which solution you agree to. And again, it just stops it. It extinguishes it. It brings the conflict down, and it brings that focus back to being solutions based, where you're just trying to find a solution for whatever you guys are talking about. I love this graphic on the right. It says the strongest people aren't the ones who flaunt their strength in front of us, but those who win battles we know nothing about. You guys, if you're going through these tough situations, even if you have an amicable situation, co-parenting is so hard, and it's so hard when there's all the feels involved. And so you guys are each so strong, and you're so brave. And just remember that even when you feel like you're failing, you're really doing a great thing by advocating for your kids. Okay, let me see here. Okay, so let's see, there's quite a bit in the chat. Instead of going through this slide, we're gonna pause right here and take another break real quick. And then I'll come back to that slide, because I would like to go through the chat and address some of the, yep, refuse to talk on the phone with your ex. Yep, text and email only. Great. Right, great. Yep, put that you're available in emergencies. That's a great idea, Derek. Cool. Thank you, Rachel, about that. Yep. Yes, right. Exactly. Great. Good, Derek. I'm happy that was helpful. Aisha, what's a malignant narcissist?
That's a nice way for saying butthole.
Okay.
I was being eloquent.
There we go. I love your eloquence. I love that reframing. That's great. Let me see. Yep, Kathy, you're good. Thank you for catching that, Rachel. Let me see. Yes. Okay. So here, here's the deal at the very end. So I'm not going to say the name, of course, but I do have the information of the person who direct messaged me. So thank you. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to grab that right now. So again, I'm not a lawyer, but gosh, I'm a mom, and I am a strong advocate for people who are going through this, because I get a little emotional. Sorry. it's one of the toughest things I've ever gone through. And I had to decide, what were my kids going to see? Were they going to see somebody who gave up and just crumpled and gave the other parent what they wanted, even if it wasn't what was best for them? Or were they going to see a parent who, strongly advocated for them and rose above and educated myself? And again, I just kept thinking about, how I want them to face things that they go through in life. And so they're going to go through some things in life, and I want them to rise above. I want them to remember who they are, and I want them to be strong people. And so that's, my kids are the coolest people, because they just have made me such a better person in many ways. So you can come out of this so much better than you even imagine. Yes, and I'm sorry, Derek, that all of that was familiar. That's, yep, it's truly heartbreaking. Yep, please keep your cameras on.
So what's today?
Oh, excellent.
Mommy.
That is something I was going to tell you as well. And thank you, Aisha, for bringing it up. So not all court and family investigators are considered equal. They get paid, generally both parents will pay like each $1,000, or each parent will pay $1,500 for a court and family investigator. A lot of CFIs will take the information from the dad's house, take the information from the mom's house, or whatever situation it is. They'll write it up and they'll say, oh, equal allocation of parenting time. Both households are safe. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing going on. The kids said this, or the kids reported this, but we don't really think it's to the level of being harming or anything. So if you're in a situation where there's abuse, neglect, or you're co-parenting with a narcissist who's threatening you and the kids, you absolutely need to find a court and family investigator and say that to them specifically. Do you have experience representing families who are involved in domestic violence? Do you have experience advocating for victims of narcissism and narcissistic abuse? Do you have experience, call them out, because if you're paying them, you need to make sure that you have the professional that's correct for your family situation. Aisha, what's Dora? I haven't heard of.
Oh, I'll have to think of what it is, but it's the credentialing, like all psychologists are licensed through there. All social workers are licensed through there.
Excellent.
Oh my gosh, I cannot think of it. Departments of
Probably regulatory. Yeah.
Yes. And so like anybody, so especially like if people have like things filed against them, like if there's like anything, like
They're gonna go or not?
anything, if they have a history of like maybe sleeping with their clients, which we know is unethical, you know what I'm
Sure.
saying?
Yep.
That's kind of general, but like anything,
Right.
like if this person has
Any
like
complaint.
yeah.
Yep.
And then you can just see that and be like, maybe I'll go with option 2, perhaps.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Oh, look at that. Man, Derek is on it. Look at that. Department of Regulatory Agencies right there. So you guys, Derek put the link. Thank you so much for doing that. He put the link in the chat. Oh, Melanie, thank you so much. Yeah. Okay, great. Melanie, that's great. Those are great resources as well. All the employee bonuses. Oh, neat. Oh, you, Derek, I just got what you were saying. Oh no, oh my goodness. Okay. All right, great. And hey, I got to tell you too, humor has been the best thing for my situation. I actually, for a period of time, was doing some stand-up comedy, and it just, man, it really helps, because some of the things, like, people just don't even, you say it as a joke and people are laughing, and you're thinking to yourself like, no, this is something that really happened to me. But it's really cathartic, because it just, yes, absolutely. It just, it helps you kind of remember and regain who you are when you can use humor to go through things. So, alrighty. Thanks for hanging in there with me, guys. I know it's a lot of information, but I really appreciate it. All right. As a mandatory reporter myself, I just want to make sure to share this. Child abuse and neglect should always, always, always be reported. Even if you just do suspect it. So what I was saying before is don't try to seek it out or do it on purpose to somebody. But even if you just suspect it, listen, they'll come out, they'll look at your kid, they'll hear what you're saying. And sometimes, just like with any agency, when there is something going on, they write it off as no big deal. Sometimes when there's nothing going on, they'll listen to the toxic or narcissistic parent who's invented this whole story about what goes on in your household. So you can rest easy at night if you just make sure that in your heart of hearts, you have always contacted Department of Human Services or called this hotline. If you truly believe that something is going on with your child or any child, you guys who aren't in a position of being licensed in a capacity that would make you a mandatory reporter, it doesn't mean that if the little neighborhood kid comes over often and never has food and always looks like they haven't bathed in a few days and whatever, I would, before contacting DHS, reach out to the parent first, because honestly, it's going to do more if you maybe buy the kiddo some PJs or some outfits, or you mysteriously drop off food at their house. That's going to do more to build them up and to help that family than reporting them, for neglect. Abuse is different. Neglect can be helped and is sometimes due to your socioeconomic level, or just the people who don't have money or don't have the resources. That can be helped and that can be fixed. And so giving people like that resources is the best way to handle that situation. When it's child abuse, it's best to let other people who are trained and whose job it is to identify abuse, it's best to let them handle the situation. Again, mental and emotional abuse is very hard to prove. And this is something, hopefully after I get my PhD, this is something that I really want to speak in front of the police department. I want to speak to judges and lawyers. I want to speak to people at the Department of Human Services about how you go about identifying and proving mental and emotional abuse, because those scars last quite a bit longer, than even bruises do. So, also really just prepare yourself. And again, this is kind of just an unfortunate truth about the court system. More often than not, the courts will accuse both parties of just not getting along. There have been many instances where there was proven abuse, but maybe the timeline was weird or the kid was too young to say anything. And so the courts just chose to chastise both parents and say, it's a shame you guys can't get along. You really need to learn how to get along. You really need to put the kid's best interests first. Both of you really need to grow up and start doing what's best for your kid. Well, that's like devastating to hear when you're the parent who does everything and you're the parent who pays for everything and you're the parent who keeps your kids safe. It's just devastating to hear. And so it's unfortunately right now just an ugly truth of the family court system is that they're so inundated with people who use the court system specifically to hurt each other that they can't really take the time that they need to go deep enough into each of the cases to really make a valid discernment. Family court also does wonderful things. They also do remove kids out of abusive situations. They also do help rehabilitate kids. So I don't want you to think that I'm against family court at all. I'm a teacher, so if anybody knows what it's like to have a ton of people in a room who can't get along, all day, every day, I teach at the middle school level. Okay, so I get it. I mean, these judges have to be sick of hearing these parents bickering over whatever, if they're going to go to Maui for vacation, or if they're going to go to Ireland, or if they're, it's like, come on, just work it out, right? So I get it. But for those of us who have been going through difficult things where our kids are truly in danger or truly unsafe, it's just devastating. So the question I always asked is like, well, what can I do then? Like, I don't like being told that there isn't a solution, or that I can't protect my kids, or that, it's, oh, that's just the way it is. That's never set good with me. So, the most powerful thing that I've learned is just focusing on what I can control. So when my kids are with me, I'm present with them. When they're not with me, that's when I might talk through my frustrations with a counselor, or I get together with my girlfriends and my guy friends, and we complain about, they ask, oh, how are things going? And that's when I just let it go. Right. When my boys were young, I really regret that I would let it spill over. I couldn't compartmentalize very well because it was the first time I had been through it. It was very emotional. Not only was my marriage ending, there were some things that I found out about, and I'm not going to say anything, but there were just some things going on that I had found out about, and and then the boys were very young, and then I was a stay-at-home mom at the time, so then I got right back into a full-time job at a daycare center and full-time school. So there was a lot of changes at one time. So, and a lot of demands put on me, whereas before I got to focus on being the best mom I could be. And I got to spend all my time with my kids, and that was taken away from me. So there's a lot to mourn. And so I had trouble when my boys were little, compartmentalizing, and I would cry a lot when they were around, or I would get frustrated quickly because I was really mad at the situation I was dealing with. And I was still a great mom, but just in retrospect, there's some things I wish I could have done better regarding truly making the most out of the time that they were with me. So especially if your kids are in a mental and emotionally abusive situation or a toxic environment or situation, they're going to need all the more love from you, and all the more kindness, and all the more patience. Kids who are in those situations will often act out at the parent's house where they feel safe. So you're like, okay, great. So unfortunately, they'll come back angry. They'll come back excessively tired. They'll come back for an entire week, their homework won't have gotten done. So then not only are you doing their homework from the prior week, you're doing their homework from that week too, and then you're the bad guy, right? So you really just have to keep your perspective as though you're thinking about it and looking at it from what your kid is going through. Okay. And they just want you to laugh with them and play with them and help them get all their homework caught up, and prioritize, their needs all that much more when they're with you. And then, enlist the help of therapists, counselors, document, because again, when I learned how to document things, I document it and then I'd let it go, right? My heart's a little bit different. I can document in my head and cognitively let it go. I'm still training myself to heal my heart from some of the things that we've walked through. But the sooner that you can figure out to be in the moment and to handle your grief at a different time, the healthier you'll be for them when they're around. Maybe. Okay. I feel like we took a good enough break. Can you guys give me maybe like, let me pull the screen down so I can see everybody's beautiful faces. Can you guys just give me like a thumbs up if you feel like we're good to go, or just do a thumbs down if you feel like you need another break right now. Okay. Cool. All right, perfect. So it looks like majority is thumbs up. Again, if you need a break, feel free to just, feel free to just go do that. That's totally up to you. Let me check real quick here. Aisha or Rachel, could you check if Ms. Diaz, is it Graciela maybe, if she can hear now? Okay, cool. Alrighty. So, gosh, I saw this picture and it was life-changing. So we have our matches that are being burned out on the left. One of the matches in the middle is pulled down, and then the others are kept safe. And under it, it says the power of stepping away. Again, it took my breath away because it was just such a great visual for what counselors had told me, for what, it's really easy to say, and they mean well, but for people who have never been through something like this, it's really easy for them to say, well, just don't let it bother you, right? Like, well, just don't let him bother you. Well, we know he's a jerk, so why do you care what he says? Well, she's, always been emotionally unstable, so why do you care what she says? Well, when the people who are telling lies about you, or who are being hurtful in a co-parenting situation, when they're getting attention from the courts, or they're succeeding in court, or they're succeeding in convincing a court and family investigator that you're the problem, not them, it feels just, you just feel out of control. You just feel like this, you want to shout from the rooftops. You want to get an airplane that flies a banner over or whatever that says, like, this is not true, this is not right. So to step away from that, it feels counterintuitive. It feels like sometimes, but if I don't respond to that text, or I don't answer that email, or I don't, go to the place that he or she is telling me I have to meet in order for them to agree to do whatever, it just feels counterintuitive. It doesn't feel right. But stepping away doesn't mean you're being irresponsible. Stepping away doesn't mean you're abandoning your children. It does not mean that you're ignoring the problem. Stepping away is going to help preserve you. The left is, me probably 8 to 10 years ago. And I'm busier than I ever have been. And I'm so, I know we may be in mixed beliefs, but I'm just so blessed and in awe and grateful for the capacity that God has grown in me, after I was able to step away, because what it has done is preserved my health and my goodness, and my energy to do great things for my kids, and ultimately to act as a better advocate for them. And also can start to consider some things, that I feel like God has ordained me to do in life. So stepping away just gives you the ability to be true to who you really are. I have some suggestions for an emotional action plan. Again, when so many things are going on and it feels like you're out of control, it's really good to make a plan. It's really good to identify emotionally what's going on with me, where am I at, where would I like to be, and how am I going to get there? So my first recommendation is you're going to identify things you're afraid of. You're going to identify what you need, what you want for yourself and your children. You're going to identify what makes you feel helpless. I feel helpless when. I feel helpless when. When you write that down and you put it in writing, how helpless you feel, then next to it, you can create almost like a pro-con list. So the con is, I feel helpless in all of these situations. The pro, or the positive response, would be you writing down what you're going to do about it. So I feel helpless when my ex bad mouths me to our mutual friends, right? And then I feel uncomfortable around our mutual friends because I'm worried that they're believing things that he's saying about me. Well, maybe a positive plan for that would be asking your mutual friends to have a meeting and say, I want to continue to be mutual friends with you, but I don't want to get into the whole deal of bad mouthing, my ex. So when we're together, if we could just not talk about him or her, that would be great. I just want to be friends with you. I don't want you guys put in the middle of what we're going through. So if you can do that, great. If not, I understand. So that's an action that you could take for a feeling of helplessness. So for me, I just wrote down every time I felt helpless, and then I wrote down what I was going to do to change that. Locate help from a therapist, life coach, spiritual advisor, locate safe advocates for your kids, therapists, coaches, maybe some of their teachers, but don't expect their teachers to testify for you, or try to put the teachers in a position where they get uncomfortable, or where they can't really advocate for your kid, or maybe love on them a little bit, because they feel stressed out, by what you might be pressuring them to do. And again, if you're pressuring them about anything, it's coming from a good place, but it still is just going to feel like pressure, to the person that you're talking to. And then determine healthy versus unhealthy coping mechanisms. There's quite a few I could mention. I'm sure you guys can guess, but unfortunately, as an adult, they're the mechanisms that we go to the quickest, because they provide the quickest relief. Food is a coping mechanism for some people. Mine are Ben and Jerry. They're my biggest poor coping mechanism that I use. So I'm also working on trying to switch into some healthier coping mechanisms. And then just be honest with yourself about what you need to do to start healing from the situation. Even if you're going through it, you can start healing while you're going through it. It doesn't have to be, post-traumatic stress disorder. It can be that you start healing from what has happened in the past while you're still going through it. And that, again, is going to make you be a better advocate and a better example, to your kids, and help them start to heal quicker too. So I was really stressed out when my boys were little, because I read all these research articles about how trauma rewires the brain. And I was worried that my kids weren't going to be able to grow up and show cognitively how intelligent they were, or they weren't going to be able to grow up and hold down good jobs because they had, all these relationship issues. Well, instead, what I chose to focus on was what I did want them to look like when they grew up. And also, the brain has what's called neuroplasticity. So you can reteach it to do many things, even at, like the ripe old age of 40. You can teach your brain up until the day you die how to create new synaptic connections and responses. So that's what you can do for your kids. And there's resources out there, to help you do that. Alrighty, that brings us to human error. This was another one of the biggest truths I just had to learn to accept. We are all human. So the courts will get it right sometimes and wrong often. Your lawyer will get it right sometimes and wrong often. It's really painful with how much they charge that they get it wrong sometimes, but they're human, and they're doing the best they can to serve you. Counselors, principals, your kids' teachers, your friends even will get it right sometimes and wrong often. If your friends have successful marriages and an intact family unit, they're not going to know, and they probably might feel a bit uncomfortable when you're talking about some of the things you're going through, because they're thinking, oh my gosh, I could never be that strong to go through something like that. Or, oh my gosh, if that happened to her, that could happen to me. Or it just makes them uncomfortable because they don't want to deal with it, right? So that's maybe that's not a friend that you get into that stuff with, and you find a friend who maybe is more open to understanding, going through some difficulties in life. And then here's the one I'm still struggling with. You will get it right sometimes and wrong often. You have to have grace, grace, grace with yourself, with others, with your kids. Please have grace with your kids. They are, dealing with what you're dealing with at very young ages. And talk about control. Kids don't get control over a lot. So as often as you can give your kids choices, especially if they're going through abusive or toxic situations, it's going to make your relationship with them that much deeper, because they're going to have a place where they get to choose one night a week what they eat for dinner, and they get to choose every day at mom or dad's house what they pick out for their outfit, whereas at the other parent's house they never get to choose, stuff like that. So you have to listen to your kids about what's important to them, and let them make choices too, so they feel they have a little bit more control over what they get to do in the positive environment. I love this from Frozen, where Olaf says, we're calling this controlling what you can when things feel out of control. This was in Frozen 2, and I laughed so hard when this came on the screen, because it's ironic. There's 3 little kids right there, because after having triplets, it's like, okay, so this is happening. I can either get all riled up about it, or I can just let this play out, and then we'll learn whatever we need to afterwards. So. Alrighty, we are down to resources. You guys have been excellent. You've been great troopers. Family law days are very important. The top resource, they have them multiple times per year. I want to say even like every 2 months. And even when COVID hit, they were holding them via WebEx, and then they were holding them over the phone. The child support hotline, there's a thing called Call a Lawyer, and you can call and just kind of do a real quick synopsis of your situation, and they can let you know. The El Paso County Bar.org and the Pikes Peak Pro Bono Project. If you do not have the funds to pay for a lawyer, you still have the right, and your children still have the right to be legally represented. So please, they are incredible. Please reach out to the Pro Bono Project and the El Paso County Bar Association, because they want to help people get access to lawyers, who can't afford to. I did list the name of a therapist. Renee Mallet is a child and family therapist. Aspen Point Therapy. They also have a Lighthouse Crisis Center, which is over by like Printers Park area. That's 24-hour. So let's say you exchange your kids with the co-parent, and then you can't hang and you just feel like you're starting to have a nervous breakdown, go right over to Lighthouse Crisis Center, and they're excellent as well. And then in Colorado Springs, there's a support group called Narcissistic Abuse Survivors. I put the phone number there. I did put the phone number to Robinson and Henry. They are lawyers that you do have to do a retainer, but they will take monthly payments. And then 2 books that helped me was The Language of Letting Go by Melody Beatty, and then Co-Parenting with a Toxic Ex. Those helped me immensely. The Language of Letting Go is about codependency, which those of us who have chosen narcissistic partners generally tend to be. We generally tend to be the givers, the ones who will negotiate, the ones who will give in, because we're afraid of not being loved or not having that love in our lives. And so the Language of Letting Go is just, you read one lesson a day, and it's just excellent. I read it, every year. So I hope this is all helpful. And Deborah should, I know she sent this through as a PDF and, and as a PowerPoint as well.